We've ranked our top 15. You've ranked your top 15. Let's kick off our panel review of the top 15 most important Bengals for the future with Joe Goodberry.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lisco. He's your host, James Rapine. Today, we're joined by Joe Goodberry, who you can find over on Bengals on the Brain on the First Star Logistics YouTube channel, breaking down all things Bengals. He's got a big series going on right now, breaking down the top 100 Bengals of all time. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network here on Locked On Bengals, covering your team every day on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Appreciate all of you out there who make us a part of your everyday routine and who make us your first listen. Today, we continue our top 15-ish most important Bengals for the future. Joe Goodberry had a very different methodology, I think, than some of the rest of us. And I think that's part of the beauty of this project, is that we all took different approaches to trying to rank the most important Bengals for the future. But Joe, welcome into the show. Talk a little bit about how you approached this idea and what your methodology was for ranking this, for putting your rankings together, for putting your list together.
Yeah, I really like this topic as much as you did, Jake. We talked about it originally when this was first, the subject of who is the most important players. And I didn't want to know your process or anyone else's process. I kind of wanted to think about it myself and go, okay, there's a few ways you could probably do this. Number one, who is most important to their success and weight it like this year most out of the next 3 to 5 years, right? Or to me, I did who is most important for them to sustain success over the next 3 to 5 years. Like, you need these guys to hit the most or continue to be good while you have them under contract in order to hopefully get through that window and win a Super Bowl, win a championship. So that's how I looked at it and tried to break ties. Like, if a guy's not going to be here after 2 years, more than likely, we don't know what's going to, like, take a Von Bell or 1 year. He's going to obviously slot lower. But then a lot of these guys they've drafted, these young guys they've drafted, especially on the defensive side, are all ranking really high for me because they need these guys to hit. They need some of them to hit. They need a few of them to hit in order to replace a lot of the defensive talent they've lost over the last couple of free agencies. And that's what really boosted their importance for me.
Joe, the Bengals have a ton of guys under contract for the next 2 years. How much did you take that into consideration or not? Like, key guys, the Trey Hendricksons of the world, and don't reveal your ranking on these guys, but Trey Hendrickson, Ted Karras, obviously, guys like that are huge parts of what they do. Geno Stone, they just signed. Sheldon Rankins. How did you balance that? Heck, even Jamar Chase has 2 years on his deal, technically. How did you balance that with the rookies as well, knowing how important some of these guys are to the team?
Yeah, so 2 years is decent enough to say they're significant for just not the short term, but the long term. But it is probably the cutoff. Anyone 3 years and plus, that's a long-term plan. I think maybe 10, 15 years ago, people would say, oh, a 3 to 5 year plan on rebuilding. It's more 2-3 years now, right? You sign these guys for 2 year deals, 3 year deals in free agency. That's very common, becoming more common for the 2 year deals. So I try not to knock those guys too much, but it is a factor when first round picks can be here for the next 5 years, the Myles Murphy, the Amarius Mims types, right? Or in this scenario where Dax Hill we are probably wasted 2 years of it, probably not going to pick up the 5th year option, depending on how he plays this year, because you have to make the decision. So really, you only have 2 years left with him. So you had to weight it all together. And that was probably the most difficult part. Guys like Geno Stone versus Jordan Battle, 2 years versus 3 years, where one guy's definitely starting, one guy probably not, or maybe is a role player. But if he hits, and we'll talk about that specific scenario, of course. But yes, it is a thing. Like, I wanted to rank Matt Lee higher until Ted Karras signed the extension, because to me it was like, okay, 1 year deal for Ted Karras, Matt Lee is more important to step in and sustain their success. But now you have 2 years for Karras, I can cool down on Matt Lee a little bit.
It sounds like your approach was in some ways similar to mine, but maybe more specific, where you looked at who the next man up was in some cases. But for me, it was what kind of draft capital did they spend here? What kind of investment did they make here? And how important is it if that player hits or misses? Like, we both kind of took this approach where the player is important, the outcome is important. The example that I'll use is Miles Murphy, who for me was third because he's a first round pick at a premium position. And if he misses, that's very detrimental. If Amarius Mims misses and can't be a starter, that's just as important in a negative way as it is if he becomes a Pro Bowler, which would be important in a positive way. And you kind of took that sort of approach, it sounds like, but applied it to specifically who's the next man up.
Mhm.
A fair assessment of how you looked at this?
Yeah, and I'll also add, so while looking at draft capital, I may have given some bonus points to the mid and late round picks because if they hit, that's a cheap asset. That's a cheap, good player that really boosts what you can do with your roster and how much more money you can spend elsewhere. So let's say an Andre Yosivach hits and is your number 2 to replace T. Higgins, and even if it's just for 2 years, that is a cheap replacement, directly comparable to a $22 million T. Higgins or a Chase Brown. If he can become your running back 2 or running back 1, that is such a huge boost. So the importance there, while they may not be important, let's say Andre Yosivach is not important this year to their success, give or take if everyone stays healthy. But if he hits, now he becomes very important.
It seems like a bit of the optimist approach, because to me it was like, well, if he doesn't hit, how much does that cost you? If
Right.
Yosivach or if Charlie Jones don't hit,
Jake, negative?
Well, it's not negative. It's just like
I'm
the
just
other
joking.
side of it
I
is,
said it for the comments.
If
That's
a
all.
low investment pick doesn't hit, like if Eric All doesn't hit, is that really all that detrimental? If he hits, awesome. Then suddenly he vaults up in these rankings. None of us had Eric All ranked very highly, except one of our panel, who we'll talk to later this week, had him in the top 15. But that's an example of like Matt Lee. If Eric All becomes your starting tight end for the next 7 years and he takes over that job next year and then gets an extension and all these things, that's a huge bonus.
Yeah.
Considering the draft capital. But like, what do you lose if he doesn't? What is the other side of that I was trying to weigh?
Yeah, I was definitely on the positive side then. Of how you get through that Super Bowl window, how you step through it and actually capitalize and finish this thing is by having as many of these mid and late round guys actually hit their projected whatever upside would be. When that's going to be different for each one of us, I think, on some of these guys. But if they hit it, huge boost.
Does Joe have Eric All in his top 15? Where does he have some of these other mid-round guys that could have huge roles as early as this year? We'll get into his rankings coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is the app you need to download right now. And when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon, well, you're going to be able to get a daily bonus. That's right. And maybe you've already done it. Maybe you've listened to us and you've gone to FanDuel.com. You've downloaded the app. You signed up maybe during the NBA Finals. Maybe you signed up during the NFL season last year. Well, the good news is all customers get a boost or a bonus daily all summer long with FanDuel. So it's not just new customers. It's not just old customers. It is everyone all summer long. There's something for everyone every day. And whether you want to wager on the Cincinnati Reds right now as they try to rally ahead of the All-Star break, or maybe you're in on the Caitlin Clark experience with the Indiana Fever. Regardless, make sure you get to FanDuel today and head over to FanDuel at FanDuel.com/lockedon to start making the most out of your summer. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
All right, Joe, let's get into the rankings themselves, and then we'll talk about where you are compared to consensus and all of the specific points of conversation. And the big one for anyone watching on YouTube that it's coming is the Jordan battle. And we teased this actually on Friday last week as well, because your Jordan battle ranking and James' Jordan battle ranking is prime for a fun conversation. But why don't you run through your top guys that you sent in for the project, and you could talk a little bit about if there's anyone that was particularly interesting for you to put where they were, why some of these guys stood out for you in that way. So we don't need to spend a lot of time on Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, obviously, but maybe there's some other guys that are interesting.
Yes, from the top, Burrow and Chase are obviously 1 and 2. I think that is consensus around for everyone. I went with Amarius Mims, number 3, just slightly scoring a little bit higher than Miles Murphy at number 4. I think both are incredibly important to their future, clearly. If both hit, I mean, what a huge boost to them. It's 2 guys outside of the top 10 that they've drafted. They haven't been able to hit these guys lately. And if they both hit on the defensive line and at tackle, both premium positions, going to be huge for their future success, not just now. I think it could be a huge boost this year, but over the next 3 years, clearly. And then I went with Trey Hendrickson in the 5th spot. And I think he's the 3rd best player on the team. And his ability to remain good for the next 2 years is important to their success, important to their pass rush. He's clearly still their best pass rusher. We'll see what Miles Murphy develops into. But as I wouldn't expect that to be supplanted or Trey to be supplanted in the next 2 years at all. So I still rank them extremely high in the importance to their success. And that's who he comes in number 5. Now, this is where people are going to talk, and we'll get to it. But Jordan Battle at number 6, Cam Taylor-Britt at number 7. They had the exact same grade, and I split them and put Battle over Cam Taylor-Britt. And for me, the process there was, I think Cam Taylor-Britt is already good. And him just remaining what he is important and is an asset to this team. But if Battle hits, if Battle reaches what he could be and becomes a cheap, good asset for the next 3 years, he still has 3 years where Cam Taylor-Britt has 2 left on his rookie deal. That's what split it for me, where that could be an area where it takes your team to another level. Geno Stone and Jordan Battle both playing well for the next 2 years could be a boost to the safety room and the defensive back room as a whole. And then from there at number 8 is Orlando Brown Jr. They still have him for a few years, left tackle. I think that's pretty easy. I think he ranks pretty high for most people. I put both linebackers next. Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt got the exact same score for me. And I still think that both, I think some people were disappointed after extensions last year. They don't make that much. But I think on reviewing the tape, they were both good and both still instrumental to the success of the defense, especially when the defense was good. And they weren't last year, and through a lot of stretches, and the linebackers did not play well. So to me, the importance of this team getting back and getting the defense to play well rests on those linebackers playing well. So to me, that I may have went a little different method with them, but I kind of had to figure out, once these guys are all in the same area here, split them up. I thought both linebackers are important to the team's immediate and next 2 to 3 year success. Is why I rank them over some of these guys that I would consider prospects. DJ Turner, Jermaine Burton, both guys, mid-round picks, 2nd and 3rd round picks, respectively, that if they hit, that's a huge boost to this team. Geno Stone, I expect him to be good. I don't expect him to be great. That's why he gets kind of mixed in with this grouping of, should be a good player, but is he important to your deal? He's important for the immediate, maybe not full long-term. He's at 13. And then I go Chase Brown, T. Higgins, Dax Hill, Chris Jenkins, not to go past them too fast. I think Chase Brown is important, but he is a running back. T. Higgins on the 1 year deal, important for immediate, but he's important for the future. Maybe, maybe not. We'll have to see. We'll probably maybe answer that question after he leaves and say, you know what? He's actually really important to Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow's success. Dax Hill and Chris Jenkins, though, I have here because both were high picks. Both should be playing a role on this defense. We don't know if Dax will, if he'll win that job or not. I think Dax and Turner are really close in terms of, even though they're split from 11 to 16 on my list, they're close. And if one of those wins the job and wins because they're good, that's going to be huge for this defense. And then Chris Jenkins, I have him lower than probably a few other people on this because I don't expect him to be great. So for me, if he hits his upside of a BJ Hill type player, does that really move the needle for me other than relieve some cap space? That's why he's up there and above these other guys like McKinley Jackson and Eric All and other draft picks of this year.
Oh, there's so much there. And I don't know exactly where to start. I'll start here with the Jordan Battle stuff, just because that's what Jake teased. And that does stand out. I mean, having Jordan Battle 6th is wild. So let's start here. Wild to me. Clearly you like his upside. What is his upside?
I think it's similar to Geno Stone, actually. And that is while not extremely athletic, a good anticipation IQ type player that can play free, can play strong, can get in the box, is a good tackler, will be an asset against the run, but won't be overexposed in pass coverage once he gets enough NFL experience. And I think that is a solid B to B plus level safety. Now, I did go back and look at, take PFF grades for what they are, but he scored so well last year. And if you look at rookie safeties that score like that, it's only like Derwin James, Marcus Williams, Kyle Hamilton, and then Jordan Battle. It's like, whoa, these guys end up being Pro Bowl level players. So maybe, looking at athleticism is not going deep enough and saying the guy produced well enough. The Bengals should be giving him every opportunity to be a Pro Bowl level safety. And if he is, and if he turns into that, well, they really don't have anyone other than Trey Hendrickson on this defense right now that you could say that about. Battle could be the next guy.
I just he's not starting this year.
He should be.
That's what he should be because of age and those things. I get that, but they signed Vaughn for a reason, and it's because, and this is why I had Battle ranked so low. Like to me, there's no difference between Vaughn or between Battle, who I had 26th, or I'll just look at my list here, Andre Yosavash or Chase Brown or Charlie Jones. And I get the PFF score last year. Fine. The Bengals definitely don't feel that way. They wouldn't have even brought Vaughn in if they felt like if Jordan could be that right now, but he's just still unproven to me. And so he's still in that class of guys where he's like that. And I mean, Pro Bowl, fine. I don't want to put a ceiling on him, but I think that's where I have him. Like, they had issues with stuff he did last year. You know that it wasn't just Dax Hill and Nick Scott. It was Jordan too. And so I think that's the dilemma. That was my hang up, is I don't think he's nearly as proven, I guess, as those PFF numbers suggest.
And I would agree with that. And I think the Bengals saw an opportunity to add Von Bell more than they wanted to just get a second safety in that room. Like, you get him for cheap, you get him for nothing. The Panthers are basically paying his salary. And you see that that's kind of an old Bengals thing, right? They see a bargain, they see a deal, and they see a familiar face, and they bring him in. Now, I'm cool with that, but I think they should be giving Jordan Battle every opportunity to develop and be whatever that ceiling may be. And to me, when you look at the young guys on defense, you could be doing that with Battle, Dax Hill, like burying them on the depth chart immediately or in the early part of their development. They spent so many picks that maybe Cam Taylor-Britt and DJ Turner end up being starters, and that's a good thing. But Miles Murphy, I mean, is he going to play behind Sam Hubbard? This may be a series of, hey, play your young guys, let these guys develop, because you need these guys, and it's important to your future success in 2, 3, 4 years down the line.
Well, when you talk about Miles Murphy as another example there, where you and I are pretty much in the same place there, having him in the top 4-ish, top 3, top 4. And James is seeing it the other way, where it's, where's his impact? How does he get onto the field? And is that a case of what we think should happen versus what we think will happen, right? And where Sam Hubbard is probably going to continue, based on what James's expectations are, right? Looking at James' rankings, and James, I can just let you speak to this. Sam Hubbard's probably going to continue to play a lot over Miles Murphy. And how much should we be accounting for what we think the team is likely to do based on their habits and proclivities versus what we think they should do?
Yeah. Part of my rankings too, just because there will be people that just watch this and haven't watched or listened to our other episodes. It was relatively short term compared to everybody else, I would say, because 2 years is an eternity. Ted Karras and Alex Kappa hadn't played it down for the Bengals 2 years ago at this time, right? And it's crazy to think of, but 2 years is forever. And so if you're under contract for 2 years, I still think you're pretty darn valuable. Or if you're a T. Higgins, well, you're clearly the second best receiver on the team at one of the most important positions, so you're still valuable. So that's where the balance is for me, or has been. And so with a Miles Murphy, it's like, okay, well, he could be really, really valuable, but I need to see him take the step before I anoint him the fourth most important player on the roster. And that's different than where you guys are, where it's like importance is also based on draft. You're relying on them to pan out, all of those things. And I get that. And it's a difference in philosophy.
I do have a couple more thoughts on this Jordan Battle ranking, Joe, even in your methodology that I want to press you on just a little bit more, get you to justify this for me just a little bit more.
Oh.
So we'll dive into my question for Joe on Jordan Battle here coming up next.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Comparison, well, it's the thief of joy, and it's easy to envy other people's lives. It may look like they have it all together on social media, but in reality, they probably don't. And therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have, because maybe you don't want to focus on the fact that Joe Goodberry has Jordan Battle 6th in his rankings, and you would have focused on your rankings. It's entirely up to you, and that's what BetterHelp can help. And it's obviously not as simple as Bengals rankings. But if you have thought about giving therapy a try, well, try BetterHelp. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to any schedule, whether you're busy in traveling all over, whether you're working from home, whether you have to go into the office all 7 days a week. It doesn't matter. All you have to do to get started is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn.
Joe, you explained your methodology to be essentially, if this guy pans out, how impactful can he be for the team? And because of that, you're thinking Jordan Battle ranks 6 for you. If he pans out and can be a solid safety, say at the caliber of Geno Stone, although they would play different roles, I think, if they were playing together, comes out for you at number 6. And he edges out Cam Taylor-Britt and Orlando Brown, the next two guys, and DJ Turner, who's a few spots down the list, and Jermaine Burton, who's a few spots down the list, based on, I guess this is where I'm struggling with it, because you think Cam Taylor-Britt is what he is, but isn't it more important that your cornerback 1 is good than your safety 2, and cheap, because he's cheap, than your safety 2 develops and is a solid player, or, that Orlando Brown continues to play or plays better than he did last year, plays more like he did with the Chiefs and Ravens for the next 3 years of his deal at left tackle than it is a Jordan Battle figures it out at safety. So I guess my question is this, if we're talking about their impact on the future, aren't some of these positions and roles perhaps more important than Jordan Battle panning out at safety? You're muted, Joe.
Yeah, if you look at it like left tackle and corner at premium positions over a safety, completely agree with that. To me, I also looked at the safety position as obvious turnover over the last year, right? From Von Bell and Jesse Bates to a disaster last year between Nick Scott and Dax Hill, and then some Jordan Battle as well. But they could be on the verge of repeating that again. And if you sit Battle behind a Von Bell, let's say this year, and don't give him a big enough role, and Battle doesn't get to prove, and you're still not sure what he can do, and you go into 2025, and now it's, do we retain Bell again for one more year, or can Battle be the starter? Whereas if Cam Taylor-Britt is still exactly who you think he's going to be, well, then he's still your cornerback 1. He's still, you're still fine at that spot. If Orlando Brown still continues to be exactly who he is, you're still fine at left tackle. He's still going to be your starting left tackle. So there's not much room for displacement there at those two spots, at least for another 2 years, right? At corner 1, and unless DJ Turner or Dax Hill end up being tremendous, right? Or a left tackle, unless Marius Mims just is absolutely phenomenal and wins that job or competes for it. We don't even know if that will be a thing. But at the safety spot, I think they are still in that position of flux, figuring out what is happening. What are we going to do? Now, Geno Stone should be good. Former undrafted guy, though, that was still a rotational player with the Ravens last year. So they still need somebody to step up into that role and be as good, or hopefully as good, as that safety group was in 2021, 2022, when they were knocking on the door of a championship. And I think Battle is the solution for that in a lot of ways. I thought Dax Hill would be too. So, until they moved Dax officially to corner, I would have been much higher on Dax Hill as well. He and Battle might have been knocking for that spot in that 6th, 7th area with Cam Taylor-Britt, because they need one of these young guys to step up and be probably better than what we've seen so far.
So it's essentially just looking for a bigger upside kind of thing for those guys. But then what about DJ Turner and Jermaine Burton, where you can make the argument that those positions, or Dax Hill, throw him into the mix too, where those positions that they could be expected to step into are just as important if they hit their upside?
Yeah, I agree with that. And in my score sheet here, Jordan Battle and Cam Taylor-Britt are in like the 70th percentile, and then Turner and who else did you mention? Jermaine Burton. Yes, they're in the 60th percentile. They're not far off. And that like to take Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, 190th, Marius Mims and Murphy in the 80 and 85th percentile. They like the gap between those guys is larger than the gap from Jordan Battle to DJ Turner. So in my process, I see them as, I have to rank them. But do I see a big gap between like DJ Turner and Jordan Battle? I don't. If DJ Turner ends up being really good in year 2, that's a huge boost to this defense. In this very similar way that if Battle were to hit his, or if Chase Brown were to hit it and be Austin Eckler at running back, that could be definitely more important than a safety becoming a Von Bell type of safety, whereas James would say or classify a Jordan Battle. So yes, there is room for a lot of this to be fluid. But when you got to make a ranking, you got to cut it somewhere. You got to do it.
Chris Jenkins, I'll throw him in there too, since you
still need a pass rusher. He's not that important.
Man, wow. All right, when he has 8 sacks in year 2, then I don't want to hear it. Then I'll celebrate. That's right. I know Jake wanted to ask you about Jermaine Pratt, and it is interesting. You had him 10th. You were highest among our panel with Pratt. Obviously, he has 2 years left on his deal, so that's a factor. But his importance to this defense, clearly, you're a believer in number 57.
I am, and this was after watching a lot of tape from the previous year. I usually let it cool for a couple months, and then I go back and watch these guys again. And the defense went exactly with the linebackers this year. And the linebackers had a situation. I think the communication was an issue on the back half, and they were maybe overcompensating a little bit. And then the defensive tackle play in front of them was very inconsistent. So their play ended up being inconsistent because of it. So there were a lot of factors. But when the linebackers played poorly, I felt like the defense played poorly. And we always have talked about, since we've been doing lockdown together, guys, is linebacker important? Is it a premium position? And we know it's not. These guys aren't paid like it. But yet at the same time, their performance, I felt, directly impacted how the entire defense played. And if they are to get back, I look back at the playoff games and rewatched a lot of them from 2021 and 2022. And those two making impact plays at clutch moments were huge in them. I mean, honestly, almost winning the Super Bowl. Logan Wilson should have never been called for pass interference or illegal contact, whatever it was. And if we are to get back there, and if they're to make those plays again, that's important to the Bengals' success.
Is that a canary in the coal mine thing? Or is that the linebackers are driving? Is it chicken or egg? Which is driving the other? Would be my question about, because that's always been the thing with linebackers. Like, not to say they're not important players, and the really, really good ones can make a difference, but how much are they a product of their surroundings? Way of running back is a product of its surroundings on offense.
It'll be fine with Chris Jenkins, fellas.
McKinley Jackson.
Oh, see, what are you doing?
There's not much of a difference between McKinley Jackson and Chris Jenkins for the importance.
Okay. Chris Jenkins is going to play way more.
Unless they need a true nose and they're developing Jackson as that nose, I could see a specific role for Jackson that maybe it's each getting 250 snaps, but I would expect Jenkins to play more.
What was your answer, by the way, to cause or effect linebackers on this defense?
I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever have an answer, right? You're right. Because I think we've gotten pretty concrete about that at running back. It's probably true at linebacker as well. And I think we directly saw it as the defensive tackle play and safety play got worse and around them, they played worse. So so maybe that may lessen their importance and say, hey, the safety room is more important than the D tackle room is more important than the linebacker room. If that's your method, I would not argue it too much.
Last thing from me, and on our panel, I wasn't the highest on him. So just for those wondering, can Evan McPherson get a little love? Can Money Mac get a little love? 20th, Joe?
Well, 20th? So to be clear, it was just that he wasn't in the ranking that we had. So I arbitrarily assigned a 20. He wasn't in the top list that I got from Joe. So I was going to ask, where was McPherson for
26?
Where was it? 26th, Joe? That's where I had Jordan Battle. 26th, Joe?
Who's more important for the future success of the Bengals?
Evan McPherson. It's not even. Are you serious?
Yeah. See, I'm looking at it much differently. You're looking at who's a better player
right now. Let's call Randy Bullock.
We don't have to. McPherson's not going anywhere, so his importance is lessened. He's going to be extended. He's going to be good. That moves the needle 0 for the Bengals and their importance and ability to get through that window.
Yeah, Joe's approach, James,
It's
is looking for a
way
delta. It's looking for a change. It's like if this guy does
yeah.
something better, how much does it impact the team versus if he continues to be the same? Well, does that make them better or worse? No, they're the same. But if they lost McPherson, obviously they would be worse. It's just they're not going to lose McPherson.
Yeah, I get it. I guess. So he's already starting at like 80%, if that's what you want to give the Bengals on a scale of 1 to 100. He's already starting at 80. And
Right.
yeah,
Very little room to be better than that. He was fantastic, and they got to the
Okay.
Super Bowl.
I'm going to poke another hole in your methodology here, Joe.
Okay.
Then we got to get out of here.
I feel so bad. I feel like that's what we've been doing.
No, this is
Well,
fine.
no.
Despite my face being red.
It's yeah. I mean, it's interesting stuff. I think it's been a really interesting conversation. But okay, if Evan McPherson is a known quantity, and so he's 26, why isn't Joe Burrow a known quantity? Why isn't Jamar Chase a known quantity?
That's
Like,
different.
you can't apply that logic to everybody, right? But at some point, you start applying that logic, and obviously there's positional differences, and
Yeah.
like which guy drives the team is different. But like everybody knows Joe and Jamar are 1 and 2. Actually, not everybody. Not everybody had Jamar 2 in our public collection of voting. Most people did, but that's where that logic doesn't quite work when you get to those really premium players on the team.
Yeah, and I tried to put the 1-year guys lower. Like, I think Joseph Osai could be pretty important for this year, but he's on a 1-year deal. He's buried on the depth chart. He's going to go low. I mean, guys like Drew Sample, Von Bell. I mean, you have to also take in the quality. Drew Sample's on a 3-year deal. Von Bell's on a 1-year deal. But yet, and to me, the importance, they're like 28th and 29th on my list here because they're just not that important. Joe Burrow clearly is the most important player on the team. So while there is a main methodology, there are the other factors that are going to pull at it at each player.
Yeah. Well, that was an illuminating conversation, Joe. We'll continue with our panel in some future episodes here, and interested to get your reactions to in the comments for those of you that like to comment on where the differences are and the methodologies, and see what shakes out for the methodologies. As we continue, we'll have Mike Santagata and John Sheeran as well. You can find Joe Goodberry on the Bengals on the Brain show on the First Star Logistics YouTube channel and on Twitter at Joe Goodberry for all of his work on the Cincinnati Bengals. Until next time, that's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hoo day, and have a good one.